Erika Kirk is surrounded by conspiracy theories and suspicion, and they don't come from nowhere. Listen, sometimes she evades, and sometimes she answers instantly.
Will you condemn the violent rhetoric of Donald Trump, the most powerful and influential person on earth?
I appreciate your question.
Do you believe that Tyler Robinson murdered your husband?
Yes, I do.
It's no wonder many people think something is off. But is it? Let's examine what she says. Welcome to Never a Truer Word, where we look at the words that people choose to use to see if they're telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. If you're new to this channel, what I do is something a little bit different. I strip away everything apart from the words that are said by the person at the centre of the story. And then I look for the truth hidden inside those words. It's a process that I use with investigators, with corporate clients, and with the media to get a deep understanding of what is being said. So we're going to look at Erika Kirk. We're going to listen to her talking at the recent CBS town hall that she did and examine the words that she uses. We're going to see as we go through this, I think there's two Erikas. In fact, there's two of someone else that's in this story, but definitely two different Erikas. And I think through the words she uses, she's picking her words very, very carefully, but we can't do that all the time. Things slip out. And I think when things slip out, she reveals more with her words than she intends to. To see the key to seeing these two Erikas, listen for direct versus non-answers. As we listen to her, we'll hear her answer questions very directly at times, and at other times, she's going to come through with non-answers. So let's go with the first part I want you to listen to. And what I want you to hear inside here, amongst everything else, is the quickest, fastest, most direct answer she gives in this entire town hall to any question that she's asked.
What is going on? Why are there so many conspiracies spreading about what seems to be a pretty open and shut case?
This is the first time that we have seen evil on display where we have social media at our fingertips. Something so evil that happened, people are wanting answers immediately. They are wanting to figure out how to wrap their mind around this. Egyptian planes.
Egyptian
planes.
Do you believe that Tyler Robinson murdered your husband?
Yes, I do.
Why do you think it is so hard for so many people to believe that reality?
Because it's too simple. Again, everyone always has to think there's more to the story. Well, sometimes there's not. I've seen the autopsy report. I've seen our case pulled together. I've been in constant contact with our lawyers, the prosecuting team. I've seen it all. And let me tell you this. Why in the world, why should we, prior to the trial, lay all of our hands and cards on the table for the defense team to see, to somehow then, I don't even know what they would do with it. But what I will say, and I want to get on the Egyptian plane thing, we'll take a flight on that for a second. What I will say is what I'm worried about, and I'm fascinated, just from a legal standpoint, to see how the United Healthcare trial pans out. And I say that because this is the first time where we are seeing the implications.
You're talking about Luigi Mangione.
Correct. I'd prefer never to say any of their names. They do not even deserve the ounce of oxygen and breath out of my body. But what I mean is it's fascinating to see how social media will impact that court case, just how it might impact mine.
Are you nervous he's not going to get a fair trial?
I'm nervous that there could be, they'll say we can't find a fair jury. Like they're going to taint the jury pool. And in that case,
that's how widespread you think these conspiracies have gone?
Yes.
That's how mainstream they become.
So much I want to touch on that. The first question, what's going on? Why are there so many conspiracies spreading about what seems to be a pretty open and shut case? Erika's reply is, this is the first time we have seen evil on display where we have social media at our fingertips. That's not true. That is not true. Social media has been around for a long time and there has been a lot of evil around there. She mentions one of the cases herself, Luigi Mangione. That has happened in the social media age. Lots more things have happened in the social media age. What I think this is, she wants a dent at social media. She wants to have a go at social media. It's one of her talking points. Now, why is that? Does she want to just all these conspiracy theories, say it's social media's fault. There's nothing to them. Go and look over there at social media. Don't look over there at any of the conspiracy theories or the things people say don't add up. And then she talks about the assassination. You'll notice she hasn't been asked about the assassination. Something so evil that happened, people are wanting answers immediately. They are wanting to figure out how to wrap their minds around this. And then she makes a big jump to the conspiracy theories and says Egyptian planes. And I think that's because she wants to talk about Egyptian planes. She volunteers Egyptian planes, which is one of the conspiracy theories that are going around. And she seems quite happy to talk about Egyptian planes. She wants to talk about it. Why? I think it's because she's got some lines prepared for Egyptian planes. She probably went into this thinking, I'm going to have to talk about Egyptian planes. I'm going to be asked about Egyptian planes. And therefore, I'm going to have some things ready to say about Egyptian planes. I'm so keen to say them. I'm not quite keen in answering the question that I've just been asked that I want to jump to Egyptian planes. So she volunteers that up. And when the interviewer is talking over her, she says again, Egyptian planes. She volunteers that. And then here's the most direct, sharpest answer that she gives anywhere here. And as we go on, we'll hear some right waffle from Erika. Watch when she does that. But she's asked, do you believe that Tyler Robinson murdered your husband? And she says, yes, I do. So many hallmarks of a truthful answer there. It's a yes-no question. When someone's lying about a yes-no question, when they're asked a question that can be answered with yes or no, they don't put yes or no in the answer. They give some mush in response, but they don't commit to a position by saying yes or no. Use that one in your life, by the way. Ask people yes-no questions. See if they say yes or no in the answer. But she says yes. Bingo. And I do. So she's expanding even more, but she's not going extra. She's not being persuasive. I think she does believe Tyler Robinson murdered her husband. But the conspiracy theories don't end there. Why do you think it's so hard for so many people to believe that reality? Because it's too simple, she says. Again, everyone always has to think there's more to the stories. Well, sometimes there's not, is what she says. That's her answer in general. She doesn't say this time, very specifically talking about the assassination of her husband. She says sometimes there's not more to the story, but she doesn't say specifically there's not more to this story. That's what I mean by sometimes our words leak and give things away. Sometimes there's not doesn't equate to in this story there's not. And if someone doesn't say it, don't assume it. You will be doing them and yourself no favours there at all. And then it gets weirder for me. She says, I've seen the autopsy report. I've seen our case pulled together. I've been in constant contact with our lawyers, the prosecuting team. She seems to be almost organising her own private prosecution of Tyler here, because she talks about our case as if she's on the prosecuting team. Our case pulled together in constant contact with our lawyers, as if this is how a defence person talks. I've seen our case. I'm in touch with our lawyers. That's how a defence person talks, not a prosecuting person, because the prosecutors are over there and she's a victim. She's in the middle of all this. But I've been in constant contact with our lawyers. And then I think she realises she's made a mistake, because she says our was the wrong word to say, the prosecuting team. But she doesn't let go there. She says, I've seen it all, and let me tell you this. Why in the world should we? So again, she's taking ownership of the prosecuting team. She's taking the fact that she's in it by referring to the prosecuting team as we. She's part of it there, using her pronouns. Prior to the trial, lay all of our hands and cards on the table for the defence team to see. To somehow then, I don't even know what they would do with it. But what I will say, and she's run out of steam at this point because she goes back to something she'll find it much easier to talk about. Egyptian planes. And I want to get on the Egyptian plane thing. We'll take a flight on that for a second, which is an awful, head in hands attempt at a joke there. We'll take a flight on that for a second. It's not funny, but it seems to me that potentially she had some lines written out and things that she wanted to say, and there was some joke somewhere about Egyptian planes and taking a flight on that she thought she'd just crowbar in here, because it's not funny, it's actually really awkward. What I will say, what I'm worried about, and I'm fascinated from a legal standpoint to see how the United Healthcare trial pans out. So she's asked about conspiracy theories in the assassination of Charlie Kirk and the prosecution around that. And she's very carefully taken the question away from that. And now she's on to the United Healthcare assassination. And I say this because this is the first time where we are seeing the implications. And she's asked, you're talking about Luigi Mangione. She says, correct. I'd prefer never to say any of their names, which is just an indication there that she's lumping Luigi Mangione in with Tyler Robinson. They do not even deserve an ounce of oxygen and breath out of my body. But what I mean is, it's fascinating to see how social media will impact the court case, just how it will impact that court case, just how it might impact mine. Social media, again, she really wants to show she does not trust social media and that social media seems to be at the centre of society's ills. That will become important as we look at more of what she says and how it will affect that court case, referring to Luigi Mangione's, and how it will impact mine. Ownership of that court case. Again, she seems to have real ownership and feel like she is in the centre of that court case. Not something that the wife of many victims of murder feel like they have, but she, without realising, I think, shows us she has that ownership. She's asked, are you nervous he's not going to get a fair trial? Well, I'm nervous that there could be. They'll say we can't find a fair jury, like they're going to taint the jury pool. And in that case, and she doesn't finish that off. She doesn't say what's going to happen if that happens. I think that's quite unlikely to happen. We've had, trials for a long time, which have really not suffered from tainted juries. That's how widespread you think these theories have gone? Yes. So I think she's trying to say these theories are getting in the way of proper things happening. Social media is bad, shut that down. Theories are bad, shut them down. She really wants to say goodbye to these theories. So in that first part we've listened to there, I do think she believes Tyler is the killer of her husband. But the big thing for me, I'm curious at how involved her language is around the prosecution. That I find extremely interesting. Okay, she is now going to talk about the Egyptian planes. Listen to the words that she uses. Does she deny taking these flights on the Egyptian planes?
Okay, Egyptian planes.
You want to talk about Egyptian planes?
Okay. I was pregnant for 90% of those trips. Mind you, I've never, all those places they said I've traveled, I've never been. I mean, I've been, but I'm not within those dates that they've.
But you even said you need to address
No, but this is, yeah, but I do on that one, only because, from a humor standpoint, I intentionally, when I was pregnant, hid. Not because I was embarrassed, not because I didn't want anyone, yes, we did keep it very private, but it's because it was a moment very sacred. I was growing a human inside of me, my baby. The world that Charlie and I live in is very toxic at times.
Yeah.
And when you are growing a beautiful child in you, I don't want to be around it. I want to enjoy eating my In-N-Out burger and my hot fudge sundae. That's what I want to do. I'm pregnant and I have 9 months to own it. You really think I'm going to be on an Egyptian plane while I am wanting to be with my In-N-Out burger and my chocolate milkshake? No, I'm not. So if you want to go through my flight log, go right ahead. It's very boring. You say I was here on this date. I have a photo in my phone to prove that I actually was in the hospital because I was having contractions. So game on.
Right. She didn't deny being on those Egyptian planes. I'll show you how this works. You want to talk about Egyptian planes? She's asked, she says, okay, I was pregnant for 90% of those trips. Number one, those trips, not 90% of the time I was alleged to be on those trips, or they say I was flying on those trips. I was pregnant for 90% of those trips. And only 90%, so that leaves the 10% that could come into play. Mind you, I've never, all those places they said I'd travel, I'd never been. So she uses the word never there, used by deceivers a lot. Deceptive people love using the word never, which sounds like never, not at any time, no. But in reality, we use it much more loosely than that. But it's a great word to lean on because it sounds solid. I've never done that. I would never do that. You have done it, and you might do it in the future. I've never. All those places they said I'd travel, I've never been. I mean, I've been, so she tells us that this never is not right. She doesn't say, I've never been on those plane trips. She says, all those places they said I'd travel, I've never been, but I've been. That's what she says. So this is an extremely unreliable denial. I was pregnant for 90% of those trips. She doesn't say she didn't fly. She just says she was pregnant. Mind you, I've never. All those places they said I'd travel, I've never been. I mean, I've been, but not within those dates that they've So she has been to those places. Maybe some of the dates don't add up or something like that. It's not a very convincing denial. But you said you need to address these things. Yeah, but I do. I do on that one only because from a humour standpoint, I intentionally, when I was pregnant, hid. So she wants to point out she's being humorous here, that it's funny. So she wanted to get on the front foot. Remember in the first thing we listened to, she wanted to bring up Egyptian planes rather than talk about conspiracy theories. But no, she now wants to let us know it's a humour standpoint. When you have to point out something's being humorous, it's not funny. I hid, not because I was embarrassed, but because I didn't want anyone. Yes, we did keep it private, but because it was a moment very sacred. I was growing a human inside of me, my baby. The world that Charlie and I live in is very toxic at times. Sad, this bit, actually. The world that Charlie and I live in is in present tense. Charlie is obviously dead, and this is a sign that she hasn't quite come to terms with his death yet. She's still talking about them as a couple in the present tense with the world that Charlie and I live in. She calls him Charlie there. She doesn't always call him Charlie. In fact, it's quite rare in all of this that she refers to her husband as Charlie. We'll come to that later, but she does call him Charlie there when it's the world that Charlie and I live in. And yeah, when you're growing a beautiful child in you, I don't want to be around it. I want to enjoy eating my In-N-Out burger and my hot fudge sundae. So when you're growing a beautiful child inside you, I don't want to be around it, that toxicity, suggesting that she's really never part of it. It was over there, separate from her. Again, I think that will be important later on. That's what I do. I'm pregnant. I have 9 months to own it. You really think I'm going to be on an Egyptian plane while I'm wanting to be with my In-N-Out burger and my chocolate milkshake? And she asks that as a question. You really think I'm going to want to be on an Egyptian plane while I'm wanting to be with my In-N-Out burger and my chocolate milkshake? She doesn't say she wasn't. She's asking a question. Yeah, no, I don't know. I really don't know, Erika. Just tell me you weren't on these planes. Very simply, and rather than all this storytelling and explaining, just say, no, I didn't. Well, I wasn't on those Egyptian planes at the times everyone said I've been on. In fact, I've never been on an Egyptian plane in my life. But no, she asks a question. She doesn't say no. And she says, no, I'm not. She answers her own question, but it's really unreliable. It's not straightforward. It's not saying, no, I didn't do that. No, so if you want to go through my flight log, go right ahead. Interesting there. Why did she have a flight log if she didn't want to be on planes? Why is there a flight log to go through for the time that she does not want to be on planes? But go through her flight log. Her flight log shouldn't exist if what she said before is true. That she has no interest in being on planes because she was pregnant and wanted to eat burgers and have milkshakes. There should be no flight log. But what she's saying there is that flight log exists. It's very boring. You say I was here on this day. I have a photo on my phone to prove that I actually was in hospital because I was having contractions. So, game on. It's not a no. It's not. I wasn't on these Egyptian planes everyone's saying I was on. It's very, very weak as a rebuttal, mostly turning it around to be questions and stating a position rather than stating the truth. And she finishes with game on, which is like obviously inferring that it's a game, but she's quite combative at times in her language. And here she's being combative again and saying game on. So on Egyptian planes, it's very strange. She really wanted to mention them and bring them up. It felt like it was going to be a no-stress thing for her to talk about, fun thing for her to talk about. She says it's humorous, but it's not completely convincing. In fact, it's not anywhere near convincing to me that she is robustly denying these allegations that are being put to her. I'd have to hear a lot more to believe that there isn't more to it. Right. We're going to listen to some more of her. That's been quite fluid what we've heard so far. But now, just get your watches out. Time the long pauses from Erika.
What do you say to people who justified his death?
You're sick. He's a human being. You think he deserved that? Tell that to my 3-year-old daughter. Excuse me. You want to watch in high res the video of my husband being murdered and laugh and say he deserves it? There's something very sick in your soul, and I pray that God saves you. I pray, because that is what is so wrong. The internet in this world has dehumanized us. My husband did something very simple. He talked to people. You're going to be murdered for talking to people. He didn't go after people, he went after your ideas. And if you think it's okay to murder someone because you think they had it coming for them, because they took the time to have people come to the front of the line if they didn't agree with you, and you think it's okay because you don't like what they say or how they say it, that they should be murdered, and you're enjoying it and you're rejoicing in that, that is evil. Evil. Excuse me.
Erika is asked, what do you say to people who justified his death? She says, you're sick. She answers the question straight away. Again, you're sick. So she's got a very firm point of view that she comes out with there. And then she says, he's a human being. And again, she's talking about him in the present tense. And then she gets a little bit weaker. She stops taking that position and she starts asking questions. You think he deserved that? Tell that to my 3-year-old daughter. She wells up with tears a bit and says, excuse me. Another question comes in. You want to watch in high res the video of my husband being murdered and laugh and say he deserved it? All questions. There's something very sick in your soul. So once again, she's back to this point, but she's only got one thing to say, which is you're sick. And I pray that God saves you. I pray because that is what's so wrong. The internet in this world has dehumanized us. So she's made a huge jump here. There's something very sick in your soul. I pray God saves you. And I know religion seems to play a large part in what she stands for or talks about, but she only invokes God at certain times. This is one of them. And once she's done that, then she takes this big jump to stop dismissing the people or saying the people who justify the death or laugh at Charlie's death are sick, and talks about what's wrong with the world. And what is wrong with the world? It's the internet again. The internet has dehumanized us, which is all of us. That includes Erika, interestingly. She, is not adverse to using the internet and using social media. We know that. She says the internet in this world has dehumanized us. Then she goes on to talk about Charlie. None of this really relevant to the question. My husband did something very simple. Now, she called him Charlie before. There was a world Charlie and I live in. When she talks about his work, especially these events that Charlie did where he would debate with people, then she talks about my husband as if there's two different concepts going on here. There's Charlie that she's close to, that she lived in the world with, and there's my husband, who was the person that did these events. My husband did something very simple. He talked to people. You're going to get murdered for talking to people? Another question. He didn't go after people. He went after your ideas. And I said her words are combative. It's not... it's about going after people, and he went after ideas, which is combative. It's not, he didn't disagree with people, he disagreed with ideas. He didn't debate people, he debated ideas. It's he went after. So there's a lot of combat in her way that she describes the world, frankly, but especially what Charlie Kirk did. And if you think it's okay to murder someone because you think they had it coming for them, if you think it's okay to murder someone, not Charlie, just someone in general, she's talking here, because they took time to have people come to the front of the line that they didn't agree with you. I mean, look, I don't know why Charlie was murdered. I don't know any insight into the person that did it. What I do know is I don't think they thought would justify the murder by saying, I'm killing him because he had people come to the front of the line if they didn't agree with you. That's not what's going to happen, but that's the justification she's laid down. And you think it's okay, you don't like what they say or how they say it, that they should be murdered, you're enjoying and you're rejoicing in that, that is evil. So it's you don't like what they say. So again, it's this, she's softening this and taking it away from Charlie. You don't like what they say, they should be murdered. Evil. Excuse me, is how she finishes it. So there, she does answer the question and she repeats that answer just a few times. She really doesn't have much more to say on that at all. She does move away and talk about the evils of the internet. I think we've seen that in every answer she's given so far. She don't like no internet. Charlie still appearing in the present tense, and that visceral language, the language of combat coming through there as well. We'll listen to more from Erika in just one moment. Now, if this kind of breakdown is useful to you, do make sure you are subscribed to this channel, because what I teach here isn't about one phrase or one person. It's a skill, and the more you are exposed to the techniques that I use, the more naturally you start to hear them in real life. People often tell me after a while they cannot unhear the stuff that I teach here, so conversations start to sound very different to them. Messages read differently, and you start noticing things earlier. That changes how you respond. So if you like what I do here, help spread the word. Liking this video, sharing it really does matter. It tells the platform this kind of content is worth sharing to other people and getting out to others. And it helps get my ideas that I want to share with everyone, if possible, to people who genuinely need them. And by the way, are you someone that talks like Erika does? We all do to a bit, we just don't realise it, because sometimes we're talking low confidence, sometimes we're not quite sure of what it is that we're saying and the effect we want to have. I have a new podcast, it's called How Words Work. It tells you how language traits show up in really bad people, manipulators, con artists, scammers, killers, and how we use some of the same traits ourselves and how to remove those so you can talk with authority, with clarity, and feel more confident about what you're saying. Just search for How Words Work wherever you get your podcasts. Back to Erika now, and listen to the distance that Erika creates between the question that's asked here and the very end of her answer. She moves the conversation on a mile.
Will you condemn the violent rhetoric of Donald Trump, the most powerful and influential person on earth?
I appreciate your question. You know my heart. Why would I ever say, yes, go murder people? This is so much deeper than just one. I understand your sentiment. I do. But this is also so much deeper than just one person. This starts at the home, okay? This starts with family. This starts with a seed that grows and grows. You can choose to have evil in your heart, or you can choose to have light. What you consume and what you absorb from the outside world will manifest itself. No, I will never agree with political violence. My husband is a victim of it. I'm a victim of it. But what I'm trying to say here is that we can blame everyone else. We have to look in the mirror. When you become a father, when you become a mother, how are you raising your kids? Are you taking responsibility, or are you giving them a device and saying, go down that rabbit hole? I'm trying to go to Pilates class. You can just sit in the corner and look at your iPad or look at your phone and go down that rabbit hole and see what you can learn from that instead of being a parent. So my call to action from that is, parents, step up. Do you want your kid to be a thought leader or an assassin? That's where we're at.
Do you think our political leaders have a responsibility to turn the temperature down right now?
Well, I think everyone has a responsibility to do that, and I'm doing my part.
Is she doing her part? Let's look at her words. The question that's put to her: will you condemn the violent rhetoric of Donald Trump, the most powerful and influential person on earth? Yes, I do. No, I don't. Very simple answers available to that question for Erika, but she decides, no, committing to a position like that is not for her. She does not want to go there. So she says, Still doesn't have anything to say. So she says, I appreciate your question, which is a little bit of flattery, but also is buying her thinking time for, what am I going to say here? How am I going to answer this question without getting me in a lot of trouble? You know my heart. Statement. Not a statement I would agree with. I don't know your heart, Erika. Why would I ever say, yes, go murder people, is a question. It's not a statement, which would be, I would never say, go murder people. So here, still very weak. And then she decides, I'm not going to answer this question. I'm going to explain why I'm not answering question. This is so much deeper than just one. I understand your sentiment. I do. We're 20 seconds into her answer here, and we have no idea whether she will condemn the violent rhetoric of Donald Trump, the most powerful and influential person on earth. I appreciate your question. You know my heart. Why would I ever say, yes, go murder people? This is so much deeper than just one. I understand your sentiment, I do. But this is also so much deeper than just one person. And there's the pivot. Not one person. I'm not going to talk about Donald Trump. That is going to get me in way too much trouble if I get my words wrong. So I'm going to move to something a hell of a lot easier. A big, massive, fat, general subject. Home. She says, this starts at home. Okay, this starts with the family. This starts with a seed that grows and grows. You can choose to have evil in your heart, or you can choose to have light. Great. True, but no, not that particularly deep, even though she said it's deeper. What you consume and what you absorb from the outside world will manifest itself. No, I will never agree with political violence. Now, that no is the closest we get to her saying, no, I don't agree with President Trump, or that what was the actual tenor of the question? Will you condemn it? She says, no, I won't ever agree with political violence. Interesting that she just says political violence. Are other kinds of violence all right? But just political violence. My husband is a victim of it. I'm a victim of it. But what I'm trying to say here is we can blame everyone else. We have to look in the mirror. When you become a father, when you become a mother, how are you raising your kids? All questions here, or just really broad, true statements that anyone could make. Are you taking responsibility, or are you giving them a device and saying, go down that rabbit hole? This is the fourth part of Erika we've analysed. Once more, she's talking about these things here. Blooming phones and internet and all that sort of stuff. This is her big thing. This is to blame for all the ills in the world. And saying, go down that rabbit hole. I'm trying to get her to Pilates class. You can't just sit in the corner and look at your iPad or look at your phone and go down that rabbit hole and see what you can learn from that instead of being a parent. So my call to action is for parents to step up. So this has moved all the way from Donald Trump to every parent in the world, apparently, is what she's talking to here. Do you want your kid to be a thought leader or an assassin? That is where we're at. The interviewer tries to get an answer out of her. Do you think our political leaders have a responsibility to turn the temperature down right now? And she won't even commit to that. She says, well, and when someone starts an answer with well, that means I'm not going to answer your question the way you think or the way you would like me to do it. I'm going to give you a bit more of an explanation, or I'm going to weaken things. So she says, well, red alert. Remember that one as well. When someone answers a question with well, it means they're not going to answer the question the way you would like, and they know it, and they're softening you for that. They're alerting you. I'm going to say something different here. I think everyone has a responsibility to do that, and I'm doing my part. So scared of talking about Donald Trump. She didn't even mention his name once there. So here, she is very keen not to take any stance bigger than be a better parent and phones are bad. These are not big revolutionary stances whatsoever, are they? And there's a big difference between the question being about Trump and the end, which is we've all got a responsibility and be a good parent. One more clip to come from Erika, and I want you to spot another pivot that she makes, and also watch for the words of a robot.
Do you believe there's a place for women like myself in modern cities who care about having a career, but also marrying a like-minded Christian conservative man?
Well, yeah. So it just depends on where you're looking. You know, if you're on the apps, I don't know if you're on the apps. I don't know if, I'm not going to ask you your personal journey. But what I will say is when I lived out here, I was here for 5 years. I never dated here because I saw vicariously through my roommate how terrible it was. Somehow getting drinks was the replacement of having coffee and breakfast. I personally would rather have coffee or brunch with someone than going, I don't drink. I find it unproductive, not because I'm holier than whatever. I just don't operate that way. But I always thought it was very strange how she would go to drinks with one guy and then go to dinner with another. So it goes twofold here. So if you're expecting to marry someone that I was blessed with, like a Charlie, you have to be the type of woman that will attract a Charlie. Are you going to church? Are you going to Bible study? Did you tell your pastor that you are ready for the Lord to bring into your life the man that you've been praying for? You yourself need to be prepared for that man, and only you will know how to do that. Does that mean staying out and going out with the girls? I'm not saying you sit on your couch and all of a sudden he's going to knock on your door and be like, honey, let's rendezvous. Like, that's not how it happens. It's not. Granted, my situation was a little different. I wouldn't do it.
You went to a job interview.
Literally. So this is how good the Lord is. He knew that because I was not dating in New York City, he knew that in order for me to know that that was my man, he had to blanket Charlie as a job interview. Because if that went in, no joke, if he came to me and said, hey, let's go on a date to Bill's Burgers, I'd be like, I am so sorry. Thank you, but no, we're not doing this.
So she's a lot looser there when she's away from assassinations, conspiracy theories, and murder, but some really interesting word choices there. The question is, do you believe there's a place for women like myself in modern cities who care about having a career, but also marrying a like-minded Christian conservative man? And she says, well, yeah, so it just depends on where you're looking, and she's going to ask a question there. And I think from what she says, she's going to say, are you on the dating apps? But she realizes maybe that's a bit personal to ask. So she does a reverse there and then just makes a statement. If you're on the apps, I don't know if you're on the apps. I don't know if. I'm not going to ask you your personal journey, i.e. I'm not going to ask if you're on the apps like I was going to. I realised that was a bad idea. But what I will say is when I lived out here, I was here for 5 years. So the question, do you believe there's a place for women like myself? Is there? Because she hasn't answered once more. She has gone filler words. I don't know your personal journey. And then she very explicitly says, I'm going to pivot here. What I will say, and she talks about herself. When I lived out here, I was here for 5 years. Here's my funny story. I never dated here because I saw vicariously through my roommate how terrible it was. Now, there's the word never again, often an indicator of deception. I know she did some dating in New York. We all do. But she's trying to get across here that she didn't. Somehow, getting drinks was a replacement of having coffee and breakfast. I personally would rather have coffee or brunch with someone than go, I don't drink. I find it unproductive. Not because I'm holier than whatever. I just don't operate that way. It's the words of a robot. I don't drink. I find it unproductive, which is fine, right? If you value productivity high and drinking then does affect your productivity, great. But it's a very, very robotic way of looking at the word. I don't drink. I find it unproductive. I don't get what I want when I drink. Not because I'm holier than ever. I just don't operate that way. Again, it's the words of a robot. Robots operate. Robots are productive. Interesting language choice. I always thought it was strange how she would go to drinks with one guy and then go to dinner with another. So it goes twofold there. So if you're expecting to marry someone that I was blessed with, like a Charlie, you have to be the type of woman that will attract a Charlie. Now, when she's been talking about her husband, Charlie, at work, he's been my husband. My husband had people come to the front of the line, my husband's book and so on. Now, again, when she's talking about the relationship, he becomes Charlie. Like Charlie, you have to be the type of woman that will attract a Charlie. Are you going to church? Are you going to Bible study? Do you tell your pastor you're ready for the Lord to bring into your life the man that you've been praying for? Sounds kind of weird to me. You only need to be prepared for that man, and only you will know how to do that. Does that mean staying out and going out with the girls? I'm not saying you sit on your couch and all of a sudden he's going to knock on your door and be like, honey, let's rendezvous. Could just be a misspeak. She doesn't say stay in, and she doesn't say go out with the girls and have fun and this person will come to your life. She says, does that mean staying out and going out with the girls? I'm not saying you sit on your couch. Again, she's very good at not having a point of view. Why? Because if she says women that go out dating are bad people, she alienates some of her audience. If she says stay in, sit on your couch, live a chaste life and be ready for the man that God sent you, she's alienating half of her audience. So she's really adroit at not saying very much. That's not how it happens. It's not. Granted, my situation was a little different. I wouldn't do it. The interviewer reminds her, you went for a job interview. Literally. See, this is how good the Lord is. He knew that because I was not dating in New York City, now New York City's quite qualified, isn't it? It's just a city. It's a large city, but she could have dated in New York or on the outskirts, or maybe she defines New York City as not going for a date right in the centre of New York, but anywhere else is absolutely fine, just not right in the centre. That's what I think of as a city. He knew that in order for me to do that, that was my man, he had to blanket Charlie as a job interview, because if that went in, no joke, if he came and said to me, hey, let's go for a date to Bill's Burgers, and she's obsessed with burgers, isn't she? Burgers come up so often in her words. Bill's Burgers this time. Nothing wrong with that. No judgment, by the way. She just really likes a burger. I'd be like, I am so sorry. Thank you. But no, we're not doing this. Who's we? Not I'm not doing this. It's we're not doing this. Thought that one was very interesting. Look, can I just go back to burgers? I've been really wanting to get across some tips in this episode. If you are dating and you notice someone mention things a lot like burgers, or you want to ask someone out and you notice them talking about burgers, like she talked about Bill's Burgers and In-N-Out Burgers, number one, talk to them about burgers. What's the best burger? Because they're really into burgers, because they've mentioned them a few times. Then date, suggest going for a burger. That would work. So in that part there, this seems like Operation Humanize Me, as if she's had this story again ready to tell, like the Egyptian plane one, and she finds a question that she can sort of sneak it into the answer. She doesn't answer the question that was asked at all. She just does Operation Humanize Me. But she does mention that she finds drinking unproductive. She likes being productive, and she talks about how she operates. Sounds slightly robotic, and there's so many loopholes in that what she's saying could be true, but you could get one impression, and you'll find that actually the truth is quite different from that impression that you got. So that is Erika Kirk on the town hall. What do I think there? Said at the beginning, there's two Erikas. There's that fluent one that answers questions quickly and has things to say. Yeah, not very believable when she's being the fluent one, talking about her dating life or her home life. She's trying to be funny and relatable, but she really does struggle with that. It's that slightly robotic aspect that she brings to it. And then there is the stiff and the awkward Erika, who's scared to take anything approaching a slightly controversial position. She is very adept at moving away from the question, though. In fact, she even flags it up sometimes and says, I'm not going to answer that question. I'm going to answer this one instead. Did you notice the two Charlies too? There is Charlie at home. He's just Charlie. The person she was married to, the person she lived with, spent a life with, was Charlie. But work Charlie was always referred to as my husband. That slightly more distant term from Charlie. Charlie sounds close. Charlie sounds friendly. My husband is a lot more formal. So there were two Charlies in her story too. Now, it felt like a launch pad for something, but it really didn't feel like a launch pad for a modern, conservative, Christian voice like Charlie was and taking over the mantle of Charlie. It really felt like the launch pad for some homespun whimsy podcast rather than this conservative voice that Charlie was. And as for the conspiracy theories, I found it amazing. Do not forget how close she feels to the investigation and the team of lawyers doing the prosecuting. Too close for my liking. I say she knows too much. She seems very certain that Tyler is the killer. But on conspiracy theories, the planes denial really didn't convince me at all, and she constantly moves to talk around the subject of what happened around Charlie's death, and so none of those things fill me with any joy that there is not any certainty, in her words, that there's not a little bit more going on behind all the scenes. What do you think? Let me know in the comments if you can. You can also get in touch on social media or just see a whole lot more there. You'll find all the socials linked at neveratruerword.com or search online for Jack Fox Never a Truer Word. But neveratruerword.com, you will find absolutely everything. We'll see you soon for something new from Never a Truer Word. And remember, the truth is always in the words.